Good morning. We're on our way to PetSmart right now. We've got Riley with us. She's mildly upset that we have to go to PetSmart, or really that we have to go anywhere. She's got to get her teeth cleaned, so we're going to go there real quick and drop her off, and then we're going to talk more about the Focus and why I traded in an Evo X MR for a Focus ST. Okay, just dropped off Riley. Won't pick her up till this afternoon. So let's go somewhere else and talk about this car a little bit. Here we are in the Focus ST. Let's tackle the first question. Why not the RS? That's a pretty obvious answer to that, but just to be clear, money. You know, the sticker price on this, I believe, was right around $27,000, where if at the time you could get an RS sticker, you're probably looking closer to $35,000. That's a pretty significant difference. Not to mention insurance, parts, maintenance, gas, all that other good stuff that comes with having a faster car. So the difference between $27,000 and $35,000 on a monthly payment is going to be at least $140 to $170 probably, depending on your interest rate, how many months you go. But more importantly than that, I didn't pay anywhere near $27,000 for this car, and that's really the most important thing. When I was looking for a replacement car, I had a certain price range that I wanted to stay in, and while I'd done some research to give me indication that I could probably get an ST down to the price that I wanted to, I wasn't 100% certain, because, you know, internet, can't believe everything. Also, I knew it was going to be a little bit of a battle, and sometimes you're up for a battle, sometimes you're not. It just kind of depends. Really, it comes down to how bad I want the car. Am I willing to sit there and battle and negotiate over a Honda Civic LX? No. Am I willing to battle and negotiate a little bit more for, you know, a Focus ST? Possibly. Depends on what my other alternatives are. And at the time, I hadn't narrowed it down to whether or not I wanted to buy new or used. Let's talk about that for a second. New versus used. I've owned a lot of cars. Very few have been new. I'll probably have to do the math. I'll include it on the screen here somewhere. But I've owned around 17 or 18 vehicles. But sticking with cars, 4 have been new. That's a pretty low number, and the reason for that is, while I never go out and buy a car thinking like, I'm only going to have this 6 months, or I'm only going to have this a year. It just somehow happens that way. I don't plan it. It just, whether it's life or boredom, whatever it may be, I end up moving on from cars. I typically average about 6 months. The Evo X MR had just shy of a year, or just more than a year. It's right around a year. And again, when I bought that car, I didn't intend to sell it. In fact, I didn't really intend to sell that car until probably about a month or so before I actually did. And one of the reasons that I never buy cars with the intention of selling it is, if you've ever shopped for cars, especially used cars, you know what a headache it is to find good used cars, especially when you're looking for performance-oriented cars. There's so many out there that are just beat the crap, and you really got to be careful. Let's talk about why the Focus ST. Well, as I mentioned before, you know, money was the driving factor. I quit my job last year. It'll be a year in August. And I knew that was coming up. I knew I was going to leave there. I hadn't quite settled on a date, but I knew it was coming soon. So I wanted to lower some cost. With the Evo, I had bought it used with just shy of 20,000 miles. At the time that we traded it in, it was sitting at just over 30,000. It was coming up due on some maintenance, you know. It was going to need new brake rotors. soon, which the Evo X MR, if you don't know, they're actually a two-piece rotor. Insanely expensive. I mean, even aftermarket is expensive. I had talked to a couple shops and gotten some estimates. While I don't like to go cheaper on my cars, I really just couldn't justify spending, almost $2,000 on brakes on a car that primarily is driven by my wife, not driven that hard. So I was looking at doing more of like a single piece swap, which was going to be significantly less money, but still going to be about $700-800. Wasn't that I couldn't do that. It was just, I've owned 2 other Evos. I know how this is going to play out. I know that there's going to be more little things like that come up that are not deal breakers, but when you're quitting your job and lowering your income significantly, at least for a while, you try to minimize those. And that was another driving force between not choosing an RS. Even if I could theoretically be okay with the payment of an RS, it would have put me right back in the same scenario. The thing I liked about the ST was for all intents and purposes, a lot of it is more, I don't want to say stock focus parts, because it's not, but it's definitely not, Brembo brakes and things of that nature. I did go back and forth with whether or not I should trade in the Evo. From a strictly black or white standpoint, I was going to trade it in at a loss. Yeah, I was a couple grand negative on the trade, but when you factor in that I didn't have to go out and spend money to replace the brakes, I got to keep the BBS wheels, which I wanted, and I also got the tax credit for the trade-in. That was one of the other reasons I went new this time. I really wasn't upside down. In fact, I did the math, and there is no way I could have sold that car myself and been better off. Trading in not only got me the best price that I was going to get, but it also gave me the least hassle. I don't like to sell used cars with problems, so if I were to sell the MR, I was going to get the brakes fixed. Obviously, I would have put the MR wheels back on there. And I was going to be stuck with these winter wheels and tires, which I don't have a use for, unlike the BBS wheels, which I can throw on my Evo 8. I could throw the winter wheels on the Evo 8. I just didn't need them. And then the tax credit. You're not going to get a tax credit if you sell the car used. So it made a big difference. Not only did buying new allow me to buy a more expensive car for the same amount of for the same budget, but it also just made my life a whole lot easier because I could trade it in. The dealership's going to go through theirs and fix all that little stuff anyways, which they did. I came back by later and looked at the car. So whomever may have ended up with that car, they got a good car. And I got to drive away in something that I knew was brand new, had a warranty, and didn't have to worry. Let's talk about the warranty. I've often said that given the choice, especially with like an Evo, I would gladly waive the warranty on a new car, and if they would knock, depending on the car, several thousand off. I'm just not a believer in warranties in general in life. Think about like your cell phone or your TV or your computer. If you buy a warranty every time you buy one of these things, and I buy a lot of cars, by the time it's all said and done, I could have bought a whole new car at that point. Over 16, 17 vehicles, if I'm buying a warranty on all these cars or paying for the privilege of buying a new car that comes with a warranty every single time, that's a lot of money spent, essentially, for peace of mind, where over the time I could have just probably bought a new car. Just one of the reasons I actually liked the idea of the warranty this time was, again, going back to, I knew I was quitting my job, so I knew money was going to be a little bit tighter for a while. When you buy a used car, even though you can generally predict what kind of costs you're going to have and, things like that, repairs and maintenance, with a new car, I knew that, I was going to have my car payment, I was going to have insurance, going to have gas, just like before. But then really it was just going to be, general maintenance, oil change, tire rotation, things like that. That was one of the other reasons I wanted to trade in the Evo. I have no reliability concerns owning an Evo. This is despite the fact that I have one that doesn't run, especially with an Evo X that's only a couple years old. It's only got 30,000 miles on it. At the same time, you just don't know. You know, we'd had the window stripping up here on the outside come off that car right when we bought it, which it was covered under warranty. It wouldn't have been that expensive to fix, but it did happen. And then obviously the brakes, those weren't going to be covered under warranty. So I mean, just little things like that that you can't really predict, where with this car I can. You know, if the windshield piece comes off, well, Ford's going to fix it. I had an issue when we bought this car where the wastegate kept having some sort of issue. Ford fixed that. You know, it was a little bit of annoyance to have to drive up there, and especially since they had to take 2 stabs at it to get it. But other than a little bit of time, it didn't cost me any money. I do value my time. At the same point, you know, it's not that big of a deal to drive up there and hang out for a couple hours or something with a laptop and get some work done. All right, battery's getting kind of low here, and I forgot to bring any extras, so this may die at some point, and we'll have to pick this up at the house. But let's talk about why the Focus ST. You know, as I mentioned, I was in a budget, which you typically are when you buy a car. And as a car guy, you know, I'm trying to find something that's going to be fun, that's going to be, you know, fast is a relative term, but, you know, faster. At the same time, though, at this point in my life, I almost gave into just buying a normal car. It wasn't that I wanted to give up on owning fun cars. It was just that for the first time, there was really something more important, and that was being able to start a business. So if the sacrifice was giving up fun cars for a while, I was willing to do that. So the Focus wasn't the first car we looked at. It wasn't the second car. We had looked at a lot of cars, and if it isn't already clear, this is actually my wife's car. My car is the Evo and the FJ, basically. You know, this is the car she drives every day. Car guys, we know what cars are out there. We already know what we want typically before. The test drive is more procedural, just to make sure that we're sure. But in an effort to keep costs down, and because I didn't know how long we were going to be in this situation, I was giving serious thought to leasing. Again, you know, I knew because of the tax credit and everything that I was really leaning towards new. I gave some thought to used cars and did look at some, but for the first time in a long time, I really wasn't putting too much effort into used cars. So we drove like the typical $20,000 new cars. We did drive the Civics. We drove the Corolla. We drove the Mazda 3. We drove a Mini Cooper. Drove a 3 Series. That was more of a, it would have to be like a demo or something to get it down to where it could even be remotely a price that would be budget. But yeah, I mean, we looked at a lot of cars, and I did a lot of negotiating on the Mazda 3 and a decent amount on a Corolla. Civic, I didn't really love it. Not to say that I necessarily loved any of them. I think we liked the Mazda 3 the best, the way it drove, the options it had, the styling, the interior. Because let's face it, on a car like that, you know, you're not buying it because it looks cool or it's fast, and you're going to spend a lot of time in it, so you might as well get one that you like being in. And of the 3, the Civic was the most expensive. It was, you know, it's brand new. They just redid them. So there was the least amount of room to negotiate, and it was just kind of like, it's okay. Not to say the other 2 were insanely exciting, but they were more exciting. Did the closest on the Mazda 3. We just couldn't, we were close, we just couldn't quite get there. You know, it kind of comes back to why I hate dealing with new cars, though, and why I tend to stick with used cars. Aside from the depreciation hit, it's just so much more clear-cut. There's so many rebates and hidden price discounts that apply that you got to really be careful and know what you're getting into with a new car. You know, they get so many different kickbacks. There's so many rebates that are only applicable if you're buying or leasing or financing. So you really got to do your homework with that. And with the Mazda, it came down to, in my mind, I was including a rebate that I thought we were going to be able to get. The dealership was saying we weren't eligible for it, which I think they were right. But that price difference and the fact that I didn't really love the car, I think kind of put things at a halt temporarily. I may have gone back there depending on how things went over the next coming days, because we were running out of time. I really needed to get the Evo gone. But we moved on. We looked at the Corolla after that. You know, they're so slow, but they've got a little bit more modern look to them, even though they're several years old. There's some concerns I have with owning one, in that there's so many of them out there. When you come to trade them in or sell them, that I feel like the depreciation hit's just going to be huge. With the Corolla, however, there was some shady stuff going on there. My background's in finance, and while I had never leased a car, before I even stepped foot into a dealership to consider it, I did hours on research. And what I couldn't do in my head, I had a notebook with me pre-filled where I basically just needed to know the purchase price, the money factor, and the terms, and I could determine where the price should come out. And, you know, I had done this at the Mini dealership, and I had done this at Mazda, and now I'm at Toyota, and this is the first dealership that the numbers weren't adding up. You know, yeah, I couldn't come to a deal with Mini or Mazda, but it wasn't because the numbers weren't adding up. It's just we couldn't come to a deal. I needed them to take X amount of dollars more off. They weren't willing, so we're at an impasse. With Toyota, they were doing something shady, because they were giving me the numbers, and I had done this dozens and dozens of times, and I couldn't make the numbers work out. So they were, I don't know if they were just flat out lying or if they were stupid, but I'm pretty certain they were doing something shady. I walked away at that point. So then we were kind of at an impasse. And by we were at an impasse, I mean me and my wife, in that we didn't really know where to go from there. We had looked at most of the cars in that price range that appealed to her, and either couldn't get what we wanted, or, you know, the more we looked into them, you know, there was always some reason why we didn't want a particular car. So I had looked at the Focuses prior. So when you're a car guy and you're going out to buy a new car, the first thing you do is you find out what's the fastest cars I can get in my price budget. So I already knew what cars were in that range, and I knew the Focus was close to it. Well, I knew the Focus was in that budget. To get an ST2 package, I knew I was going to have to do some negotiating. So I had shown it to my wife a few times, and she was she's not ever been huge on the Focus styling, and I wouldn't say that I'm huge on it either, but it's okay. But after going through all those other experiences, she was open to it, you know. So I had the day off, or I took the day off from work, I don't remember. Let's go look at one of these. Let's at least go drive it. Sometimes they look better in person than when you just see one go flying down the road, or you see one on a website. So we did. She definitely liked it a lot better in person. And she also got the color she wanted. They had like the dark blue, which was very similar to the color that we had the Evo in, that she liked. And she liked that it had like the Recaro seats that were, you know, have the bolstering and everything. So we drove the Focus, and she loved it. You know, after having driven the Mazda, the Civic, and most recently the Corolla, getting in something like this was a huge step up as far as like performance, the way it drove, the way it handled, and she likes fast cars. So she was on board with it as soon as she drove it, and they had it in her color. So at that point, it just became a negotiating game. Originally, I was looking at leases. I knew the only way to get an ST in the price that I wanted was to buy, because I had done the research on the rebates that Ford was offering. So when we went in to talk with the salesman and start negotiating, really, I showed him the rebates that were out there. I told him showed him some similar dealerships that were offering them for sale, and was just completely upfront and said, you know, hey, this is what we want. We need it for this price. If you can do it, we'll make a deal. I will say I did not tell them I was trading in until I'd already made a deal on this car, and I strongly suggest you do that as well. There's two reasons for that. One, if you tell them you're trading in, they're going to start talking to you about trade-in numbers as well as the new car numbers, and you're going to get confused. And whether they intentionally mean that or not, it works out better for them typically if you're confused, obviously. The other thing is I wanted to negotiate them as two separate entities. I wanted to negotiate the purchase price on this and then negotiate the trade-in on the Evo, and it helped a lot because, you know, we had a finalized price. I was happy on the Focus. So then it really just came down to I needed at least $25,000 for the Evo trade. I'd gotten them down quite a bit on this, so it didn't completely surprise me when they came the lowest trade-in I had been offered. I had been offered anywhere from 25 to 26 on the Evo, and they came in at like 24.5. So it was pretty simple at that point. You know, I just looked at them and said, you know, hey, I've got this deal. We've got the deal on the Focus. I'm good there, but I've gotten better deals on the Evo, and I even had the CarMax one with me, showed them that and stuff. And I was like, really, it's coming down to you give me an extra $500 and we're done. You know, everything's good. And so they did. And that made it a done deal at that point. And that's why I always prefer to keep that stuff separately. Had we been doing that at the same time, we'd have been going back and forth. They already knew we were ready to buy the car. They knew we were serious. Whereas had we been negotiating everything simultaneously, I don't think we would have gotten as good a deal as we did. All right, I'm running out of time. I got to head home. Pretty much gone over everything. I did want to go over some of the final numbers that we ended up paying for this car. I know I kind of alluded to them, and it's only because I just don't know them off the top of my head right now. But I'm going to head home. I got to get the dog out anyways, get him breakfast. Wife needs to leave for work here soon. As I mentioned, this is her car, so let's get home.
Let's just do what you want to. Please don't be polite, cause I like your attitude. Let's forget about a curfew, cause all that is stuck in my head. It's me and you, both speed and my heart is racing, but I'm not sure I wanna pace it, cause it only does this with you. Our bodies meet, I can feel the tension, move us into the next dimension. Let's just let our bodies be true. We make out for the thrill of it, mess around for the thrill of it. Don't stop now, never let this end. For the thrill of it, we can have it, no regret.
All right, back home. Let's get Buddy. Hi, Buddy. Oh. Hi. I'm going crazy mode. All right, I'm gonna take care of him. We'll probably run to the park real quick. All right, buddy.
Live life without regrets. Girl, put your faith in me, even though we just met. Let's forget about a curfew, cause all that is stuck in my head. It's me and you, both speed and my heart is racing, but I'm not sure I wanna pace it, cause it only does this with you. Our bodies meet, I can feel the tension, move us into the next dimension. Let's just